My wife's father, who also happened to be my CEO, publicly tore up my $2.8 million contract and laughed, "This is embarrassing, you'll never make it in this industry." I smiled, nodded, and quietly filed the one clause. He overlooked what happened next, brought the entire board to its knees, and left him, begging me to stop. Chapter 1. The Contract and the Curtain Call. There's a moment at every wedding when time freezes, not for the couple, but for the people watching them. For me, it was when I stood at the altar with Sophia, her hand trembling in mine. Her father, William Easton, CEO of Easton Strategic Ventures, sat in the front row, grinning like he owned the room, because in a way, he did. Not just the wedding. Not just Sophia. He owned me too. Or so he thought. We met when I was an intern. I had no pedigree, no Ivy League polish, no family money. Just raw talent and a will to work longer, harder, and smarter than anyone else. William noticed. He groomed me, promoted me, mentored me. By the time I turned 30, I was the youngest director in the firm, and I thought marrying Sophia would make it all real. That I'd finally earned my place. But William never saw me as family. Only familiar. The contract. A month before the wedding, I signed a contract worth $2.8 million over 3 years, a retention bonus, project equity stake, and deferred shares in the firm's new international arm. My name was printed in ink next to William's. The firm's biggest client portfolio had become my baby. I should have been celebrating. Instead, William pulled me aside the night before the wedding. "Don't let this go to your head," he said, swirling his scotch. "You got lucky. But one wrong move, and it's gone. Just remember who made you." He said it with a smirk, a half-laugh, but it stung. I'd built those accounts, I'd negotiated those deals, but to him, I was still the intern who dared date his daughter. I should have seen it coming. The curtain call. 3 months into our marriage, the boardroom looked more like a stage than a business meeting. My presentation on a $40 million acquisition deal was flawless. The numbers, the pitch, the legal path. Applause followed. Then William stood. With deliberate slowness, he pulled out my contract, page by page, and ripped it in front of the entire board. "This is embarrassing," he said. "I trusted you. And you failed. You're off the acquisition, and off the payroll. Effective immediately." Laughter, silence, confusion. I didn't speak. I didn't argue. I just watched the man I once admired publicly erase me. Sophia wasn't even in the room. He thought he humiliated me. What he didn't realize was, that contract had a clause. One he never read. And in that silence, as everyone stared at me waiting for a meltdown, I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because I was about to make him regret everything. Chapter 2. The clause. They forgot. The contract William tore up was symbolic. But the real one. The binding legal version that lived in the company servers, signed, time-stamped, and archived by the firm's legal team. And buried inside that document, on page 42, in section 9.4c, was a clause I'd spent 3 months negotiating in silence. In the event of unjustified termination without formal board review, all active equity holdings and intellectual property contributions revert to the contracted party at full vesting value. And confidentiality restrictions are rendered null. William had signed it. So had the board. No one read it closely. Why would they? I was family. I was harmless. I was just the kid from nowhere who lucked into the big leagues. But I knew one thing they didn't. I wasn't going to be anyone's pawn anymore. The data he didn't own. Months before that fateful meeting, I'd built a proprietary internal model, a data architecture tool that streamlined multi-client portfolios, ran risk predictions, and helped the firm land their 2 biggest overseas clients. I coded it in my name. I registered the model externally under a private LLC. That clause. It gave ownership back to me the moment William terminated me without due process. They laughed when I left the boardroom empty-handed. But the next morning, when the firm's overseas client dashboard suddenly locked out and the project files went offline, I got a call. From the CTO, then from the legal department, then from William himself. The first call. "William, what the hell are you doing?" Me. "Executing my rights under clause 9.4c. You terminated me without protocol. You forfeited access. William, you're bluffing. That clause doesn't even me. It's been verified. The IP is mine. The platform is mine. The equity. Mine too. You can check with legal click. I knew what was coming. He'd try to spin it, try to claw it back, threaten litigation. But it was too late. The storm begins. By noon, 3 of the firm's largest international partners had paused operations. By the next day, 2 withdrew altogether, citing data security and trust violations. A week later, the board called an emergency meeting. Without William. Because the more they dug, the more they realized. William had acted unilaterally, violated protocol, and destroyed a $40 million deal. Because of ego. And while he thought I was bleeding, I was preparing my next move. Chapter 3. The proxy he didn't see coming. The emergency board meeting was off calendar, private and tense. They called it damage control. But behind closed doors, it was a reckoning. I wasn't in the room, but my presence was everywhere. In the graphs showing investor withdrawal, in the collapse projections, in the locked-up client systems they could no longer access. And yet, William still thought he had time to salvage it, until the proxy vote landed on his desk. The silent stakeholder. What William forgot, or never cared to remember, was that I wasn't just an employee, not just a son-in-law thrown a job. 2 years ago, when the company needed capital to enter the APAC market, I had invested. Quietly. Anonymously. Through a shell entity. Through a private fund. I owned 4.8% of the company. Just under the threshold that required disclosure. Not enough to trigger alarms. Just enough to shift board influence when it mattered most. And when I exercised my proxy vote, I aligned with 3 other minority stakeholders who were fed up with William's arrogance, his unchecked ego, and the string of hushed HR complaints that mysteriously disappeared. Together, our combined voting power reached just over 51%. The email. At 11:03 a.m., William received the formal motion. Subject, Board Resolution 11B, Executive Removal Consideration. A motion has been formally submitted for the immediate suspension of CEO William Redgrave, pending internal investigation into the unilateral termination of a contractual stakeholder resulting in IP loss, client walkouts, and reputational harm. All proxy and direct votes will be counted at 4 p.m. He called my number 5 times that day. I didn't pick up. The meeting he couldn't control. At 4:17 p.m., the board logged the vote. 8 for, 3 against. William was suspended, removed from daily operations, placed under investigation, and while security escorted him from the executive floor, he barked his last threat. You think this is over? I built this company. A junior board member replied coldly, no. You inherited it. He built what you destroyed. The look on his daughter's face that night. My now estranged wife showed up at my apartment. Tears in her eyes. Accusations on her lips. But no answers. You planned this, she said. You let it happen. I didn't argue. She stood in the doorway for a long time, realizing something. That the man she used to dismiss was never just an employee. That her father's downfall began the moment he tore up a contract in front of a room full of men, and forgot the silent one with the pen. Chapter 4. The offer they couldn't believe. The board begged for a solution. Clients were walking, developers were resigning, the tech stack that had made the company millions was now a legal limbo of frozen IP and licensing disputes. And William, exiled, humiliated, and under review, was nowhere near the room. But I was. Wearing no tie, no title, just a folder in hand. They thought I came to gloat. Instead, I came to make them an offer. The folder, I placed it gently in the center of the polished glass table. No drama, no grandstanding, just facts. Inside was a new licensing proposal, clean, efficient, ironclad, to restore the IP I had authored while under contract, the same IP William illegally terminated when he tore up my agreement. But this time, I wasn't offering it as an employee. I was offering it as a third-party vendor, through my new private tech firm. Same product, same backend. But my terms, I said. No backdoor edits, no optional clauses, no arbitrary terminations. There was silence. Then chaos. One board member scoffed. This is extortion. I leaned in. Come. No. This is what your CEO called embarrassing. I call it business, the buyout clause. That's when I slid forward the second page, the one that stopped their breath. An optional clause, a full buyout of their licensing rights, permanent exclusive use, in exchange for a 9-figure deal. Not dollars. Equity. In short, I wasn't just selling them their salvation. I was offering to own them. From the inside out. And here's the twist. If they refused, I'd license the product to their top competitor, who had already sent over a term sheet. The vote. Within the hour, a new vote passed. I was officially brought in as a strategic partner with a 17% stake in 2 board seats. Not a CEO. Not an employee. But something far more powerful. The ghost in their system. The owner behind the curtain. The voicemail. That night I received a voicemail from William, just breathing at first. Then, 2 words. Please. Stop. He knew what I knew. This wasn't revenge driven by rage. It was justice by design. His downfall wasn't loud. It was surgical. He built an empire on arrogance. And I bought it with silence. Final chapter 5. The silence in the shareholder room. The annual shareholder meeting was supposed to be a celebration. New record profits. Fresh investment rounds. A glowing PR campaign about adaptability in crisis. But behind the curtains, something else brewed. And everyone who had once mocked me, now waited for me to speak. The very same room where William once tore up my contract and laughed, now buzzed with murmurs about the men who replaced him, without ever wearing his title. The presentation. I walked to the stage, not with charts or a marketing deck, but with one sentence. This company was never broken by its systems. It was broken by its ego. I let that hang. No PowerPoint. No applause cues. Just truth. Then I tapped the folder in my hand, the same kind William once discarded, and opened it to page 1. This is the original contract that your former CEO deemed embarrassing. The same one that preserved our clients, our tech, and frankly, your reputation's gasps. And then, silence. The statement that broke him. At the end of the presentation, I turned to the board, and to William, who now sat at the very back, not as a speaker, but as a shareholder with zero influence. You didn't just lose a contract that day, I said, turning directly to him. You lost the one person in this company who never needed to be allowed to lead. He couldn't look at me. His daughter, my ex-wife, quietly got up and left. The vote that sealed it. The final formality was held at the end. A permanent revocation of William's voting rights due to violation of fiduciary duty and public embarrassment to the firm. The room raised hands. Unanimous. No one defended him. Not one. And when the chair asked if I wanted to make a closing statement, I simply said, let the silence speak for itself. The aftermath, and the legacy. Weeks later, an op-ed appeared in a top business magazine titled, The Men Who Bought Back His Dignity. One clause at a time. I didn't give interviews. Didn't write a tell-all. Instead, I focused on what mattered. Growing the tech I built with my own hands. Running my own firm. One built on trust, not inheritance. And above all, walking into every room as the men they underestimated, and now can't forget. Final line. They laughed when he walked out with nothing. But they stood in stunned silence. When he came back with everything. Was this justice delivered? Or should the storm have gone deeper? Drop your verdict below. I see every comment. Like if you believe silence can be power, and share this tale with someone who's been wronged.